And we're back. Well, not really, because this is the first episode of us running a Form Check Friday, which I swear is me not just trying to totally rip off Bryce's thing, but we're here with my lovely co-host.
I'm Anna Albersworth. I'm married to him.
Allegedly. But I figured that this is a really good way to show you guys some lifts, show you what we're looking at, and give you guys some ideas to fix some problems that you might be having, because odds are if someone here is struggling with something, you might be struggling with it too. So hopefully we can all learn from today's video, and hopefully we don't just sound and look stupid, because I'm not entirely sure if we're in focus right now, but hopefully this works. So inside of Team Activated, it's a place where I have a whole bunch of my exclusive educational content that people can get into. But I think the real benefit of the team is that it's a place where lifters can post their videos, get feedback directly from me every single day. I'm in here every day looking at lifts, analyzing lifts, giving people ideas of what they can do better and how they can improve their technique, how they can select accessories to better their lifts. And I figured that since I'm doing this every day, it would be a really good opportunity to make a thread where I would ask people to submit videos that they wanted to get made fun of on YouTube. So that is what we are here doing today.
And we've never seen these before.
Yeah, so we don't know what we're getting into, so totally unprepared. So hopefully that makes it a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
So first off, we're going to take a look at Jose's deadlifts. And first thing I'll say about Jose is I'm not going to out him on what his Instagram handle is publicly, but you probably do follow him, and he is absolutely my favorite Instagram page of all time. But he is doing some pulls and double overhand, nice conventional, decent levers, going to hook.
It's an interesting angle to film from.
Yeah, trying to show off the butt. What are you seeing?
There's a lot of squirming happening in his spine is one of the first things that I'm seeing.
Yeah?
What do you think?
I think that's one of them. There's a couple things that I'm picking up.
Yeah.
And gonna just wait till he gets through the more workinger sets. But I think what I'm looking for here is, like, you can kind of see as he's pulling, there's a little bit of bar roll in the hand. And I think that's a little bit of what's leading to the squirming, because his grip is set really like high in the hand. He's almost like torqued under with the double overhand. He's switching between double overhand and hook, but even like the hook grip, you can kind of see it is just having that little bit of waver. And I don't think that's, it, but I think one of the first things that I might want to do, regardless on the double overhand sets versus the hook, is just making sure that the bar is lower in the hand, because if it's hung up high and we're kind of like wrist curling in almost, we're gonna lose it anyways. The bar is gonna get lower, so we might as well start lower and give ourselves a little bit more favorable of a start position.
And that's probably contributing to why the bar is coming away and his elbows are bending on some of those, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, linking to that is it looks like he's kind of like trying to squeeze the bar too hard versus just letting his arms hang. And then the upper back set, I think, is kind of the other part of the picture. Miana's pointing to the screen, like you can,
like you guys can see what I'm looking at.
She's pointing at. But like on this one especially, what we got going on is, again, he's not really anchoring into himself super well. Like, he's doing a decent job of setting the lats on the wedge. But I think what I really want to try is just, number one, getting the bar lower in the hands and really trying to find that, like, pulling into himself and not pulling back, but just a little more straight arm pull down action, and almost like using the straight arm pull down to pull himself into the bar. And I think that's going to fix a lot of the T-spine. And if we couple that with the lower hand position, I think that is going to make this a lot smoother break off of the floor. So.
Yeah. The other thing that I'm seeing is that, like, shrug at the top, but I think that's all just kind of like a combination of the same things.
And I think, like, a little bit of the shrug too might be, this is his speed work, so it is pretty light.
Okay.
So, like, some of that might be just like he's flinging it at the top and it's kind of carrying through a little bit momentum. So that's, I think, like, forgivable on speed work, because he hasn't been shrugging his heavier stuff that I've seen from him. So again, like, it's a solid pull, good levers.
Yeah.
He's coming up to his very first meet that I peer pressured him to sign it up for. So I think he's started the prep at 10 weeks out. I think he's about 7 or 8 weeks out now. So he's just kind of stringing it together for the first meet to, have fun and learn from it. And he's a little bit worried about, like, doing well at the first meet, but first meet's your first meet. It is not going to be your best meet unless you just compete once and never compete again. So if you're thinking about signing up for a meet, like, just get on the platform, learn from it. And I think that the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is just treat it as a learning experience, because platform experience is so freaking valuable. And like, to really figure out how to game a meet day, like that's going to be something that's going to take you like 10, 20 meets to really dial in so that you feel confident in everything you're doing. So the sooner you can get onto the platform, the better you're going to do.
What I'm seeing here that's really cool is that we've got Pascal, who's already responded, telling him the same things that we've said.
I'm going to like that comment live.
Yeah.
He's going to see me do that on. Anyways, moving on. Freak's been posting his wife's deadlift in here. She's not on the team. I should probably, bully her into signing up as well.
Peer pressure.
But she is a strong woman, and I know what she has been working on, but I haven't seen this pull yet. She's gearing up to pull 600 at her next show. And what typically happens is she kind of gets that like double knee band shove under a little bit. And that kind of is characteristic of how a lot of strongmen pull, because, hitching is legal in the world of strongman. So from that standpoint, I can't be too upset with seeing that. And something that he's talking about down here is that, like, in his mind, that he wants to have her pulling to the same standard as a powerlifter without straps, because I think that the higher we can raise that threshold where a strongman isn't resorting to a hitch, the higher their hitching threshold will be. And usually when I see a powerlifter with this kind of patterning, if they are someone who is kind of getting that double knee bend, knee shoving under, what is happening is that we're letting the hamstrings get shorter without the hamstrings needing to move the weight. So that double knee bend is usually reflective of needing to get stronger hams. And this is definitely looking so much better than it was. So I'm very, very stoked with the progress. And what we've been getting her to do is just a shit ton of hard hamstring work, GHRs, Nordics, leg curls, all of the above. And it is definitely coming around. And the other thing that we're getting her to do is we're getting her to run some stiff legs right now with kind of like a trying to find hamstring intent. And right now with her stiff legs, she's having a hard time feeling hamstrings, but they are catching on. And what I'm kind of trying to meet her is she able to get more hamstring into her stiff leg as she does more and more direct hamstring work? And the fact that this is looking better, the fact that the stiff legs are coming along, it's working, and she is strong as shit. So I am impressed.
Right. I don't want to get too nitpicky, but like through her initiation, I'm fine with that. But you can see her elbows kind of like bend and unbend when she actually starts pulling. I don't super love that.
Yeah, I think that is a little bit of her
trying to get around,
having, being a big lifter and like having to get around her knees. So like that's something that Dan Bell used to do a little bit of to make space for himself before he wedged in. So I think that that's a little bit forgivable, because she isn't, she's like bending her elbows, it looks like, to make space, not so much to like try to row into the bar. So I don't think I'm too worried about that. But again, I think like this is a very strong pull, and like it's going in the right direction. So I am stoked to see it. Now, we got Joseph in here. I haven't looked at these at all. I think he's posted a couple times in here, so I'm not super familiar with his lifting yet. He's pretty new, so let's see where things are shaping up. Going off of the block with a deadlift bar. I think the first deadlift I remember seeing from him, he was really flinging the head, so that's definitely an improvement. So that's looking a lot better. Now, the one thing that, yeah, a little bit of the elbow bend. So we could do a better job of like kind of just thinking arms as ropes. And like if I have someone that is kind of doing that elbow bend, a cue that I'll often use is just trying to get them to flex their triceps really hard as they're wedging in. Because if they're flexing the triceps really hard, locking your elbow, it's kind of impossible to like try to bicep curl the deadlift bar. And like the biggest reason that, especially on a mixed grip, I want to get rid of that is the underhand especially is in a pretty vulnerable position. It doesn't really look like it's happening as much on the underhand, but I think the fact that it's happening on this side, we can't really see the underhand. I'd really want to, it is happening. I'd really want to try to think like just arms as ropes. And if arms as ropes doesn't do it, just flex the triceps. And like personally, when I'm wedging into my deadlift, like when I'm here, I'm literally trying to like push the bar away from me
Just gonna say that.
just to get everything as far as I can and make sure the arms are as long as possible. And
one thing that I'm seeing is like when he's kind of pumping in, he's like pumping his, like squeezing his hands at the same time. Like I would want his hands to be set at that point and kind of like pushing into the bar at the same time as he's kind of like pushing his back away from it to kind of like have those long triceps, long arms.
And like what I'm visualizing when I'm in this position is, again, like I'm pushing my hands down to the bar, but I'm pushing myself up away from the bar. And even though I'm pushing my hands down, like I'm protracting as hard as I can, me being pushed up from the floor is going to carry the bar with me. And that's where the slack pull comes from. And if we're pushing the bar away, that's going to get more slack out of our arms. So we're going to be able to do a better job creating force out of the bottom of the deadlift. Now, first thing I was going to say is, before we add a point of the elbows, is a block pull with a deadlift bar. I think that approaching a meet when we're trying to get deadlift bar timing, I do like it. I am okay with it. Like I have my guy Keelan pulling off blocks with the deadlift bar right now. But if someone is further out from a meet and they're just trying to build, I would much rather see a block pull with a stiff bar, because the stiff bar off the block is going to be really freaking hard to break off the block. And I think that it has much more value for translating to a deadlift bar off of the floor. And like for reference with myself, like what I can do off of a 4-inch block with a stiff bar, I always beat that number on the next meet day. So I know if I'm doing a block pull with a stiff bar well, when I go back to a deadlift bar, that little bit of whip, that little bit of being able to build into it, I get so much translation out of the stiff bar off the block. So I think that if he is just training, I'd probably rather see a stiff bar on these. And like, it's going to be way harder. He ain't going to be able to lift as much, but he's going to be able to get more out of it.
For sure.
And up next, we got...
Did he have another video?
Oh, he does have another video. Skipping over.
Oh, overhead press. I feel like we were just talking about overhead press.
Oh, this is Pascal. I scrolled the wrong one.
Yeah.
Never mind. Whoopsie daisies, technical difficulties. I was like, why does that look like Pascal all of a sudden? And the squat. I remember seeing his earlier squats. We were really trying to dial in that T-spine pack, head pack combo. And I think the biggest thing here is, like, if you're in this position, kind of hunched over, walking out a squat, your upper back isn't going to be as locked in as it can be. And even if he did recover pretty good and he did find it by the time he got squatting, by the time he actually initiated, I still think that if we could, just going to wait for it to happen, like that position, like right there.
Yeah.
He got it like right around there. If he could be in this position the moment he unracks the bar and then not lose it through the walkout, I guarantee the bar will feel so much freaking lighter on his back. So I just want to, he can do it. He can get here. This isn't a flexibility thing. We can do it. So I just want to see that happen sooner so that he can have a tighter back. And I think like my goal on racking a squat is I want to be as tight as I possibly can before the unrack happens. And if I do it right, the bar will pop off the J hooks before I even try to stand it up. It'll just start floating because everything is so tight, everything is so locked in. And even with, 700, 800, 900 pounds, it still happens if I'm doing it right. And to me, that is my sign that I'm tight enough. And that is my sign that I am ready to unrack the squat. So I just be looking at creating a lot more tension prior to. And I think that like it should feel lighter. It should clean up. He's got another rep here. And again, you can kind of see how he is just kind of in that hunched over. And like kind of the problem with finding that pack sooner is it can feel a little bit unsecure on your shelf. But what I would do to make up for that is he's unracking pretty damn vertical, right? And if you're packed and you're straight up and down, you're not going to have a ton of shelf distance. But then once he finds his hinge, like he's able to suck that back and the bar doesn't feel like it's going to fall off. So what I'd be thinking about unrack wise to help him have a better pack from the beginning is instead of standing it straight up, stand it up with a little bit of hinge and then maintain that hinge through the walkout. And then he doesn't have to have such an aggressive hinge as he's initiating. And again, I think that should clean things up. But other than that, it's a pretty damn clean squat.
The only thing that I would add to that is like once he finds that shelf on the unrack, trying to just get used to getting 2 steps to come back.
Yes.
Like keep the tension in the hips, 1 step, 2 step, and maybe like a little shift to like straighten out your foot if you have to. But right now there's just
There's a lot of stuttering.
There's just a lot of stuttering going on, and I think that's kind of making the problem a little bit worse.
And I bet too, like if he does have like that pack secure, everything locked in better, he probably won't have to feel like he needs to stutter as much to get into the right spot. Now, accessory wise, what I'd be thinking to try to dial this pack in, one of my favorite things for like squat upper back setting is a face pull with kind of a squatty intent, meaning that we're going to be starting rounded over, shoulders IR, and then we're going to be pulling ourselves head backwards, everything backwards, hands high wide, and we're just trying to create thoracic extension, kind of like pull everything in the middle of our back. And that's kind of what I want my upper back to feel like when I'm packed in, when I'm wedged in. So I think I'd probably want to run like a face pull with a squat intent form for an accessory to kind of dial in sensation. Then it should be easier to find it the next time that he runs his squats. Now, actually moving on to Pascal, he's looking for some feedback on squat and overhead press. And he is a very tall human, very long levers, but he has a really pretty squat regardless. Like it's a beautiful squat. I helped him with a pec surgery rehab, and like what's funny is that like his pec comeback went better than mine. Like he ended up, surpassing what he tore his pec with on his meet. So like,
is he a competitive lifter?
Yeah, he lifts in the Swedish IPF, whatever the heck their organization is that's under the IPF.
My only thought is that if he's lifting in the IPF,
it's the first rep's a little borderline.
Yeah.
He is getting a little bit further in on the subsequent reps.
Yeah.
But again, I probably would want to see a little bit more dunked.
Yeah.
And I think like as far as like the last squat that he posted, or the earlier squats that he's posted in here, he had the tendency to kind of like do the tall guy thing where the hips shoot and he's kind of ends up like using hips to finish. And I know he has been cranking the quad work. I think like seeing these later reps that slow down and that it is happening a little bit, but it isn't, excuse me, it isn't going full like good morning shit show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually really happy with how like what he's been doing for the quads. I think it definitely is working. And I think like seeing how well this is shaped up, I would literally just keep doing the same stuff you're doing. Keep hammering the quads, keep hammering the high bars, keep hammering the fronties. And I think that little bit of tilt should clean up a bit. But I also want to say that he's a really good deadlifter and has a really strong back.
I was just going to say.
So I think that like, obviously we want to keep more of the quads in the squat and get more quads to contribute to the back. But I think big picture, like if he does have to just grind out a really big squat, like he's got a strong back, like don't be afraid of using it. So this is one of those things where we want to get more quads in to help what the back's doing, but we want to also, recognize that if this is happening, like we're okay with it because he does have the back strength to support it.
That was one of the first things I noticed with his squat, especially when you said that he did have a tendency to pull his hips up first. You can tell right away that he has a strong back.
Yeah.
I was actually going to ask if we had him doing like extra back work, but it makes sense that he's a bigger deadlifter. Because you do see sometimes when people's hips shoot up first, they'll just kind of do the Steve Goggins and they'll lose it.
Yeah, crumple and die.
They'll crumple. But no, he's doing a really
good job. He's got the back
job
strong enough that he doesn't crumple and die. So like I'm very okay with this. I still want more quads, but I'm okay with him using his back. And the other kind of thing that I'd want to note is I'd want to see a front view of this too, just because I know that he has a history of some hip weirdness. So I want to just kind of check up on how the hip rotation looks through it. But from the side view, like I think it's like we're solid. Now his overhead press.
Ooh.
This is something that I've been kind of encouraging him to do as far as, continuing the pec progress, and mostly too to be protective of pec, because if we're thinking about bench press, like obviously pecs are going to be one of the bigger, if not the biggest mover of bench. But I think that if a guy can have stronger delts, the delt can kind of pick up a little bit of slack if need be, and it can end up being a little bit protective of the pec. Now, I didn't watch the video because I was busy talking to the camera, so I'm watching this for the first time now.
Like, my only thought is that when he starts to get tired, he does, like, a overarch a little bit, but...
Yeah, and I think, like, for myself at least, I'm not an overhead guy. Like, I'm not really... I wouldn't consider myself an overhead coach at all, just because that there was a long period of my powerlifting career where I didn't really overhead press because I was stupid, and that's probably part of why I tore my pec. But... the reason that I prefer to run them seated on a very high incline instead of standing is that, similar to what he's doing, I will get a lot of thoracic extension going and really lean back. And I find that if I'm seated stabilized on a bench, I can get a lot more into the delt than I would if I was just standing and kind of turning it into a leaned back incline press. Even though like my bench when I set it up isn't a true vertical overhead, it is on like one notch down, so it is kind of incline. It's still less of an incline that I end up when I'm standing. So I think that's something that I'd probably want him to try, unless he does have like, unless he's really just trying to get a strong standing strict press. I think he probably could do better training for what we're trying to accomplish if he was seated with back support, because then we're kind of forced to work with the delts rather than leaning back into more clavicular pec. So I think other than that, like I'm pretty happy with how it's looking. I think one thing technically that I kind of do know might help is in the bottom end, he has his giant ass back, giant ass lats. It might help him a little bit stability wise. And again, like this is kind of something that we might be cheating away from delt a little bit, but I think if he's just thinking about bigger numbers, if he did try to stack a little bit more on the lat, maybe not even like, doesn't even need to necessarily set his tricep on his lat, but even like just like flex the lat a little bit in the bottom and kind of like try to catch in lat tension similar to what we try to do on bench press, I think he could feel a little bit more secure in the bottom end. And if big strict press is the goal, then that might help him accomplish the goal a little bit better. Now we're looking at Tyler, 2-inch block pull.
Ooh, lots of block pulls.
Yeah, I mean, had it in the team program.
I was going to say, was it in the program?
Yep.
Restart that, yeah.
Yep. Going through. Good job packing in.
I almost wonder if his belt's a little bit too tight.
Yes. But again, like this is what I want to see more of on Jose's. That is a pretty lat wedge. Just going down, arms are super long.
Yeah.
He does get bucked a tiny bit forward out of the bottom, which I think is usually reflective of a guy kind of like almost trying to like lean back too much.
Yeah.
So I think what I'd be aiming for is he's doing that really good lat pack, but he's kind of doing it while leaning back. What I try to kind of conceptualize is as he's doing that, trying to like think about like leg curling his knees forward, pushing himself forward with the hip. So instead of just pulling back against the bar, he's pulling himself forward so the shoulders stay a little bit more stacked over top of it. And I think that would make the break off the floor look a lot cleaner. Now, as far as Miano's talking about on the belt, it does look like it might be a little bit too tight to have a really, really, really as good as possible brace. And kind of what I'm thinking about with that is if a belt is too tight, you can't get that diaphragmatic little bit of expansion to set, and it's in the way of you creating more tension. So I'd probably want to see like one hole looser and
pushing out into it.
And then have a little bit more push out into it. And I think he could make his torso more rigid, which will probably clean up that bottom end break a little bit more. But as far as this goes, like I'm really, really, really happy with how this pull looks. And that tip forward, I think that it really is just technical and just getting the shoulder over the bar a little bit more, and I expect that to go away. Now, figuring out the positioning to get the shoulders over the bar, that might not be something he gets right in the first try, but I would just be mindful of if we are tipping forward, I just try to end up in that position or get to that position rather than being forced to end up in it. Now,
recent bench PR, or squat PR, sorry.
Yeah, and a bench fail.
And a bench fail, yeah.
Do you want to start with the good or the bad?
Let's do the fail first.
Okay.
It is the first video anyways.
So Matt's been in here a long while, so I've watched a ton of his benches. It's come along huge. And he used to have a tendency to really like pterodactyl the bottom and be like really tucked, but shoved in external rotation. And we're trying to get a lot more spread in the bench. And part of why he was pterodactyling is the sternal head of the pec that's going to be more responsible for the elbows out. That is a little bit laggy. So we're doing a lot of building to try to get more of that in that to support the bottom end. And we're also trying to teach him to kind of create a little bit more rear delt tension spreading into the bar. And I think that a lot of this miss is, this is kind of, you can see him fighting that overtuck. You can see him fighting for it. So he's going to a position where he isn't strong right now. And that is okay to not be strong in a new position if the new position is going to have a lot more potential down the road and will arguably be a little bit safer on pecs and shoulders long term. Yeah. And I think that like seeing this miss, this is kind of just reflective that we got to just keep on cranking on the flare dumbbell presses. We got to just keep on cranking on the wide grip deliberate flares. We got to just keep on cranking on the long pause slingshots where we're trying to spread in the slingshot to kind of create that upper back tension. And I don't think that like this is anything at fault of him for missing like this, but it is just reflective that like the work that we're doing, we just got to keep doing more of it, and it should come along because it looks so much better than his bench used to. He used to, be benching much less than this and just being in a jacked up position and kind of squirming and fighting and getting it. And like, if there's a very advanced lifter that I'm working with that does have kind of screwed up technique, I usually don't want to change where they are too much because they're a very advanced lifter and it is working for them. But if I got a newer guy that I'm working with and trying to help out, I kind of want to guide their technique to something that will be more efficient long term, because no matter how strong he gets, if he's just pterodactyl and handcuffed in the bottom, he's not going to be able to do as much as he could if we do take the time to build up the pecs to then tolerate that little bit more flair. And I'm expecting, and like this is his like third week kind of really trying to adapt this technique. So I think that this is okay that he's missing it. I think this is actually his first heavier bench that he did take with more deliberate flair. So like I'm okay with the miss. And I think like as far as the miss goes, I think the only thing I might have wanted to do was, maybe based on the previous set, maybe not taking quite as aggressive of a jump, or not taking this jump based on the previous one moved. But he's learning, he's getting there. He's got his first meet coming up this summer. So I'm excited to see it. And his squat progress has been...
Is this the same one we saw already? Maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We already didn't see this video because he posted it in the main thread, but his squat progress has been insane. And a lot of that was learning how to brace better and create more tension. And what he used to kind of do is you'll see a little tiny bit here, but you can kind of see as he's grinding through, his upper back caves in. And what he used to do when he kind of hit the sticking point, rather than being able to just chug through it, he just kind of like, he's very flexible. So he could like fold himself and kind of contort under the bar to kind of cheat away from leverages. And he ended up having like, it would just like upper back collapse, and he kind of like fold himself into a giant arch and then shove the hips back under, and it worked. But again, it's one of those things where it would only work for so long. And once he gets to a certain weight point, it'd be very hard to get past that. So we're really trying to teach him to create more anterior tension and then contract his back against that anterior tension that's already there. And bracing really is just a matter of co-contraction. Like, your brace is a suspension bridge. The tension you have in your abs pulling ribcage down matches the tension on your backside, and that's how we get locked in. And this is, again, like I'd say, really, really, really good. Now, the one thing that I'm going to think that we might want to keep directing work towards is, as he's coming out, we have the little bit of hip shooting back and the little bit of knees coming in. Now, I'm not worried about knees coming in from like a knee valgus dangerous standpoint, but I am worried about it from the, if knees are coming in, that means that we're trying to go away from something that isn't very strong. And what happens when the knees come in is that the adductors are going to gain relative shortness, the glutes are going to gain relative length. So it's letting the adductors kind of cheat away from where they'd have to work really hard, so that the glutes can then take up some of that load. So this is kind of telling me that I might want to start cranking on a little bit more adductor work, even if it is just as simple as running some Copenhagen dips a couple times a week. Like, that could be enough to get them to come up, and it should catch up pretty darn quick. He's already put in a ton of work to his quads, because this used to look way worse. He was like scooting away from adductors and quads, and then the upper back collapsed. It was it was a little bit funky looking, but I'm really, really, really stoked with how this has come along. Like, Matt's someone that's in here like posting videos from every training session, so it's really easy to kind of track what he's doing and watch the progress happen. And like, that's what's fun for me, is like seeing people in here getting better. So really, really, really stoked to have him.
Ryan Selk?
Yeah, I already saw this one because he sent the video to me.
I haven't seen this one. We love Ryan.
We do?
I love Ryan.
Do I need to be worried?
Yes.
Oh no. So, for those of you guys who don't know, Ryan is the person that is responsible for me being good at powerlifting.
Yes, we love Ryan.
Because before Ryan took me under his wing, I was just like a strong kid that was a dumbass and had no real idea for programming. And he's who kind of taught me how to think about programming, taught me how to think about technique. And I guess the problem that he's having is that in that context, he was helping me with multiply. He was one of the best Canadian multiply lifters in history. And he's transitioned to Raw. He took a couple years off just due to, work stressors and being an adult with a real job that at a big fancy company, but he's now getting back in the swing of things after a little bit of a layoff. And what I'm getting him to do right now is, I should have pulled up one of his old deadlift videos.
I was just gonna say,
but
he's not as close to the bar as he used to be, eh? Like pulling his hips in. That's the only thing
But I
that
think
I'm
that's
noticing.
but I think that's part of, he's on a deficit too.
Oh, he's on a deficit.
So that's
okay.
probably why the hips are a little bit why the hips are
Okay.
further back. But basically, what I'm trying to get him to do is get more quad into his deadlift. You can see from the deficit right now, like the leg straightening first, he's just shooting it back into his hips because multiply history, his hips and back are very strong. He's never really trained quads right now. And something we've been joking about is like, he used to think that he had bad quad genetics, but he never really trained them. And like the last 3 or 4 weeks where we've been getting him to actually do hack squats and actually do leg press and actually try to do some front squats, he's like noticing some quad growth coming. And I think that like this being where it is right now, obviously he's kicking back into the quads. But compared to what this looked like, a handful of weeks ago when his first pulls back, he's getting way more quads into it. He's actually able to get knees over the bar in the start position. So again, I think this is promising. And this is another one where it's like, I know he has a really freaking strong posterior chain, so I don't necessarily want him to avoid it. I just want him to start getting more quads into it so that his posterior chain can then handle more because the quads are up to snuff and he's just not dumping to it. Yeah. So I think that this is, again, like for what we're trying to do, this is good. And what I'm going to be wanting to meter here is, can we just keep the knees a little bit more over the bar, a little bit longer, rather than just kicking straight back and turning into an RDL and having more of just like a straight up and down versus just having the bar shoot backwards. So that'll be kind of what I want to track, is just, is he able to stay in the quads a little bit longer, stay over top of the bar versus ending up behind it? And I think that if he can do that, that's going to let him then do more with the back strength that he has to finish an even bigger pull. And for reference, like Ryan, every time I do a meet, like he'd always like my third deadlift would be on the bar and he'd always be like, even I can do that.
I was just thinking, I wish we had one of his best deadlifts that we could show, because he is a great deadlifter. And I was even telling Seth this past week, the last 3 weeks or so, my deadlift has gotten consistently better. Like I felt like I just couldn't find my technique. And I've been thinking deadlift like Selk. And honestly, it like solves all of my problems if I just try to deadlift the way that Selk deadlifts.
Because what he does really well is he has that thoracic rounding at the start position. And
he does a really good job of pulling his hips in towards the bar too, from a conventional stance.
Try to find that video over on the other monitor. Keep talking.
Sorry.
Keep talking. Entertain them.
I don't know what to say now. Oh, it's right there.
Yes, found it. But like the thoracic rounding, what that kind of does is he's got a really long back. And that rounding kind of lets him scoot the hips in just a little bit shorter. And like you can see, he's finishing this lift. Like this is spinal erectors. And I think that kind of the take-home point is that like his slack pull kind of sucks, but like he has a very strong back. And I think like what let his raw deadlift work his last run at Raw is that he was kind of able to round the back, scoot the hips in decently close so that his hips didn't have to work super hard, his quads didn't have to work super hard, and then his back has to work super hard, but he has the back to support it. So getting Miana to pull better is, she has strong legs, she has decently strong hips, but again, like she's someone with really short limbs and a much longer torso, similar to me. So like getting those to be able to work, like getting that little bit of thoracic rounding lets her scoot in, and she can drive a little bit better out of the bottom now, and it's coming around. So the hunchback Selk deadlift, like it might look ugly in this context, but it can be advantageous if you do have the back strength to support it.
And like, I don't think that my deadlift will ever be able to look like that.
No, we don't necessarily want it to look like that, but like the start position with the thoracic flexion is what we're going for.
Exactly. And if I just like think to deadlift like that, I kind of get this like combination between mine and his.
Where it works.
Where it works.
Now, last one in here, Weston tossed his up.
We have Adrian.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Adrian. Never mind.
Sorry, Adrian.
Scrolling.
200 keys.
I only saw this one because he posted in the main thread, so I'm cheating.
I like his hat. Oh, the bar came away from him a little bit at the bottom, eh? Did it? There's a glare. You see that little kick forward?
Yeah, that little kick forward. What else are you seeing?
I mean, that's the main one. His feet are all over the place too.
Yep. And then right there,
Yeah.
that head flick.
Yeah.
So I think kind of bottom up. This is his like one of the first times he's pulled sumo in a very long time too. For context, he's strongman Olympic lifter mainly, and he's just trying to run sumo as a bit of an accessory right now. He previously did pull sumo before, and he ran into knee issues because he was doing like the ultra wide toes flared way out, and it was just the hips weren't flexible enough to kind of sustain the knee position. So he did get a little bit jacked up knees there. But I say like generally, this is pretty good. Now, to get nitpicky, to turn it from pretty good to really freaking good, first thing is looking at foot pressure, how he's kind of rolling to the outside of his foot. He's kind of more outside of the foot than inside of the foot. Sumo deadlift is so much adductor that if we can root the inside of the foot down and kind of have pressure from the inside of the foot pushing outwards, we still want to spread the floor, we want to be spreading the floor from the inside of the foot, that's going to let us catch a lot more adductor and should make him feel a lot more assertive through the initial push. Now, the next thing I want to address is, like Miana pointed out, that bar is squirting a little bit forward as he's driving in. So what I might want to do on setup is, he's setting up like pretty vertical shin. I might want to kick the bar like half an inch, 3/4 of an inch, maybe not 1 inch. 1 inch might be too much far away from him, but just a little bit further away would let him get the knees more over the bar. And it's kind of another matter of, if you're going to end up in a position once the bar breaks, I'd probably just try to aim for that position, just because that's the position where you're going to, because it's where you're stronger.
Yeah.
So starting the bar a little bit further away, a little bit more knees over, should help him get a little bit more quad into that initial push as well. And then
he can kind of like push his shins into the bar as he's pulling the bar into him a little bit better.
Yes, exactly. That's going to be like getting the knees over. So we're trying to get the knees over the bar so the shins meet the bar, so he's not just far behind it. I think that'll make that start look a whole lot prettier. Now, what's interesting is sumo kind of starts off as a lot adductor, transitions to more glute the further a guy gets towards lockout. And what I want to point out here is kind of right around where the glute starts to gain leverage, he's flinging his head way back. Now, what I want to suspect is that a little bit of that head fling, what's going to happen when we go into more cervical extension is going to kind of allow a little bit more lumbar extension to happen. And if more lumbar extension is happening, that's going to be anterior pelvic tilt, which is giving a little bit more leverage back to the adductors at that spot. So I'd kind of be thinking like we might just want to run some just dedicated glute stuff to try to get a little bit more like actual butt cheek strength. And I think then he could actually use the butt cheek strength, not need to fling the head, stay in a little bit better position to then have a stronger gluteal finish versus just trying to like skirt away from the glutes through the mid range. So I'd kind of just be technique wise, I'd be focusing on just driving the chin back rather than having that fling, and that should let him maintain a better brace through the mid range. And then I think as far as training goes, I think the best thing we could do is just a shit ton of hip thrusts. You're agreeing with me? That was a joke. That was sarcasm.
I know.
Okay. I thought she was nodding.
I was, but I was kind of.
So what would you be thinking for glute work? I got a really good idea for something I'd want for this.
You tell me.
So I think the first thing I do, if he has access to it, I'm not familiar with his gym, so I don't know. But a belt squat is still going to be adductor in the bottom. But if we did a belt squat where we're imitating our sumo stance and made the whole goal the entire time to keep the abs on and driving the low back into that belt, so we're kind of a little bit more posteriorly pelvic tilted, then we can make sure that the glutes are driving through the mid-range and finishing up at the top. And I think that's one of my favorite ways to get more glute into a sumo pull for guys that pull sumo. And the other thing that might work well as well is a high box squat with kind of like a more sat back west sidey hip intent. And we kind of just want to kind of probably set the box height, decently high. So like similar hip height to where you're starting a sumo, and then just try to make it again like as butt flexy off the box as possible. That can be another decent way to drive them up a little bit for that mid-range help. What were you thinking?
I honestly, I don't know.
And another one too that might be worth playing with as well would be a Dimmel deadlift in the sumo
Yeah.
stance. And again, like the big intent there will be head stacked as possible, brace on as possible, and just like trying to drop the bar to just below the knees, catch it with his butt, and then drive her up to lockout. And I think like thinking of like his whole programming scope, I'd probably rather run the Dimmels and the belt squat with the glute intent than toss in the high box squat, because the squat might interfere more with his other more strongman-y stuff that he's running. So yeah. And I think that is actually what we've got. Nope, never mind. Still got Weston. I'm getting too excited to stop filming. I'm getting really warm because I shouldn't have wore the two, because our stupid studio light bullshit I got in here.
It is warm in here.
It puts out so much heat that I'm very sweaty. Okay, so Weston, pause bench AMRAP at 270 pounds. What are you seeing?
On his earlier reps, it looked like he might have kind of, I don't want to say dumped, but kind of like
Dropped it on
dropped
himself?
it on himself, yeah. Like I like to think about like catching the bar the same way that you'd like catch a baseball in a sense, if that makes sense, where you're like catching the bar before it actually drops like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he has the fail
and then
at
he
the
really
end.
does that. Yeah.
I love my YouTube suggestions. All just camera stuff.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you kind of think the same thing, where like he's not really like
Yeah,
doing
he's
an
not-
assertive catch?
He's not really using his upper back to catch the bar. And I think that like what I might want to run as a accessory that would really help with this catch is he's someone like me where he's, you know, got a big enough rib cage that his floor press would be pretty much the same range of motion as his comp bench. And what I'd want to do with that on the floor press is when we get to the bottom, obviously let the triceps settle. But when I'm doing floor press with this intent, what I'm looking for is when I watch back the video, I want to see the triceps settle. Then I want to see my chest get higher because I'm using my upper back to pull up towards the bar. And I think that can be a really, really, really good way to dial in upper back tension on bench. So I think like that's going to be the biggest thing I want to clean up. And you kind of see the bars, you know, has a little bit of up and down stutter as well. And I think again, like if he got a little bit better upper back tension, a little bit better lat catch, we could clean that up. And I think a floor press is probably the best way to teach that in regards to learning the feel directly on like a bench press pattern. Now, in terms of accessories that I'd probably want to run to supplement that, I love a straight arm pull down with kind of, again, a bench press intent. So I'm trying to pull the rib cage tall, set the shoulder blades down, and I'm just really just trying to flex lat through. And you're not going to be able to like lift a ton of weight there because it's not the best like leverage to train the lats with a straight arm pull down doing it that way. But that's the feel that I want to have as I'm lowering the bar on bench. And like people want to be like, lats don't help bench press, the lats are a rower. And like, yeah, no freaking shit. But the thing is that once we get the bar like a certain point past the rib cage, once the humerus crosses that plane of the rib cage, the lats are no longer going to be a shoulder extender. Like once I'm back here, I flex my lat, the elbow's going to come a little bit forwards. Like it's not going to be the biggest thing. It's not going to be the most important thing on bench. But if we can get that little bit of lat feel and a little bit more eccentric control, it's going to help guide the humerus to a better spot and make sure we're kind of loading in the right place. We have a little bit more support in the bottom that we can kind of like almost rest on before the pecs, the delts, triceps actually push the bar up to the top.
One thing that I was thinking, if it were my bench and I were having trouble kind of with that catch and kind of just like dropping into it, I would probably run Spotos.
Yes, that too. That too. And I think like the floor press is, I think what I'd use as a teaching tool to kind of learn the feel. And then I'd try to use the feel on a Spoto press.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, it's like
kind of like an inch off the chest. Kind
of like when I'm thinking about a Spoto, again, I'm trying to like, obviously my pecs are stopping the bar more than the lats are. Yeah. But I'm trying to feel the lats bind up and I'm trying to hold it with some of the lats so that there is a little bit more support and a little bit more security, a little bit more stability in the bottom end.
Yeah.
And something else that I did years and years and years ago is I had a coach who shall remain unnamed. This is like one of the very few good things he got me to do, is he got me to do triple pause benches where I would lower the bar like an inch or two and just really try to like flex the upper back, spread into it, and like feel my upper back contract. And then lower the bar another inch or two, flex it, try to contract, lower it another inch or two, flex it, try to contract, go to the bottom, flex it, try to contract. I don't know why you call it triple pause bench because technically there's 4 pauses, but 3 stops before you get to the chest. And that can make you just learn to connect to the upper back so well. So that could be another kind of tool we use to build that sensation. And how I've used that for guys that I program for is if they are struggling with it, is I'll get them to like run their first couple warm-ups with, you know, with the empty bar, do 2 or 3 reps with the stop, 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 touch, just to kind of get that upper back feel. And then, you know, you do that for 2 reps with the empty bar, and then just do 5 or 6 empty bar of like full speed normal, and try to find that catch better because you did the multiple pauses on the subsequent rep. And you can do that again with 95, you can do it again with 135. Once you get, you know, 185, 225, you probably don't want to be doing that.
Yeah.
But again, it can kind of help to prime and cue you so that you know the feel that you want to carry into your top sets. So I think that is officially what we got going on here. But that is episode 1 of Form Check Friday. We're going to do our best to make this a semi-regular thing.
Yeah.
And if you made it this far in the video, just click the link below, sign up for the team, because it really is the best value in powerlifting coaching. It's only $29 a month right now, and you can get feedback from me every single day on every lift that you do. It doesn't just have to be main lifts. We got people posting accessories as well that we're trying to dial up technique on, and I'm even building out a accessory lift library right now just so we have reference to what we should be thinking about on accessories and what we're trying to target, as well as, I guess, what the accessory is good for targeting.
We're also running weekly lectures that Seth is hosting himself and putting content together for. So
yeah,
that alone is worth it, personally.
It is fun. Those lectures are so much fun to do, but they're such a pain in the ass. So I really want people to sign up to watch the lectures because they take so much effort to put together, but they're also really fun to do. And it helps me refine my own thought process with coaching when I have to kind of put everything into a digestible piece of content information. So yeah, sign up. It's sick. Also, new shirts dropping Monday. So
should I stand up? Show?
Maybe. Will you be out of focus? Will the autofocus grab you? It's grabbing me. Hide my face.
We're launching them in bone and black.
So. I wanted the black, but I think the bone actually might look cooler. So, yeah. Anyways, that's it. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Let's look over there. And then let's both go to the edges. Like you edge. Come closer so you're in focus.
I can't see myself right
now.
Get
the peeking further. Down a little bit, head down. Now.
Look that way or that way?
We're looking in the middle. The picture's here. No. Okay, you can't go out of focus, Miana.
Okay, I'm not trying.
You gotta be in the same plane from the camera.
Can we be at F4 or something?
Okay.
I feel like that would make more sense. Yeah, that's better.